Welcome to the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, your dedicated parental alienation coach, here to guide and support families as they navigate the challenges of high conflict divorces and custody battles. On this podcast, we'll share insights, practical strategies, and hope for those on the journey toward healing and justice. Whether you're personally experiencing these challenges or just want to learn more about the complexities of parental alienation and custody disputes, you're in the right place. You are not alone. This is the Fractured Families podcast, where every voice matters and every story is heard. And if you find my conversation helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us reach more families who need it. Hi, thanks for joining the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, your host. Today I have with me a special guest, Lawrence DiMarco with the Law Center. He is an advocate for alienated parents. He's an advocate for law, and he's going to share with us, and we're going to discuss parental alienation in the legal context, what you can do as an alienated parent, how the law can work for and against you, and what resources he has to help you better prepare for your case. Larry, thanks for joining. Let's talk a little bit about let's talk about you. Tell us about you.
I am a licensed attorney in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am less active, almost completely inactive in terms of litigating at the moment, because I am exclusively doing two different things. One, I'm the founder and sole owner of the Law Center, which is both a YouTube channel and other resources for self-represented litigants. And I make online programs with that. I also am the executive manager of the International Council for Men and Boys. We raise awareness of 12 issues of male disadvantage. A lot of those women also suffer from. So it's not just one gender I'm focused on, but it's basically out of custody issues that affect, I would say, men and boys slightly harder or slightly worse than women, but all the issues that I deal with are really both sexes struggle with.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into this, how you went from being a lawyer practicing to what you're doing today.
Having gone through a painful, high conflict custody litigation with my child's mom brought me to where I am today. There's no doubt. Had I not been through that myself, I never would have caught on to this, seeing it from the inside. So I did well. It was hard, painful, but I saved my family, which so many people can't say, especially with our topic of parental alienation, that I know that you're aware of. Meaning that, anyone who's an advocate with this and tasted it themselves knows we're all unwilling advocates after we've been in a high conflict custody situation. So that brought me in, and that's why I'm so passionate, because it's actually my way of giving back, because I survived. I survived how dangerous family court was, with some privileges that I had, a great support system, a legal education, being a licensed litigant, but it was still so hard for me. And I imagine how hard that must be for someone who didn't have the resources that I had. So God protected me, my son, my entire family from what could have happened. So I create free and very low cost resources for self-represented litigants so other people can get out alive.
It can be devastating for families who alienated parents, and not just parents, but siblings, grandparents, family members. Alienation affects all, but mostly it does affect parents. So for those who are going through it, we know the struggles and the challenges you face when dealing with the family court system and dealing with lawyers. I'm not talking bad about lawyers, but I am saying that a lot of them don't understand parental alienation. Can we talk a little bit about what that looks like in the courtroom and how our listeners can be best prepared to find the right lawyer? And then we'll talk about, if they decide to be self-represented, how you and your resources help with that.
How it looks in the courtroom, it depends upon your county and your judge. I understand that some judges will say we're not to use that word and that language. There's a misconception that is controversial. It's not. It's supported by science, research, as much as any condition that someone can suffer from. However, because of a misinformation campaign and because I would say natural abuse of the system, because attorneys can be so powerful and lawyers have a code of ethics that says they're to be zealous advocates. But what if your client is wrong and unknowingly to you or is abusing the child through what we call parental alienation? Because you can misuse the theory and because it can be misused, therefore, domestic violence advocates use a scorched earth policy of saying, well, it doesn't exist, rather than other type of reform that might be more productive. So for that reason, the language is harder to use in some jurisdictions so that you actually have to use a code and translate the language that the science uses. You have to not use in order to still present the same concepts, but you can still litigate with the same concepts in most jurisdictions. They're kind of workarounds that you may or may not have to, depending upon where you live and where you're litigating. Charity, you had a lot in that question. I'll let you break it down how you want me to approach each step
Yep.
of what you wanted me to discuss.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that because it is complex. So let's talk about alienated parents that are going through litigation that first come to realize this is what's happening, because we know many parents initially don't even know it exists. You and I and many of our colleagues continue to drive awareness, but that doesn't mean that many people recognize it when it happens in your household after your breakup and after your separation, high conflict divorce. So you're an alienated parent, you start to recognize this, you panic, you hire a lawyer. What should we be looking for?
What you should be looking for, you said you already, at this stage, if you already hired a lawyer, I would hope that the lawyer that you hired is proficient in parental alienation theory, which there's no guarantee. So I would want you to back up and with that lawyer, before you give that retainer, ask the lawyer if they're proficient in parental alienation theory. The Parental Alienation Study Group just gave a priceless, valuable gift, a 140-page, give or take, summary of the entire parental alienation theory, so that now, I recommend any parent who is experiencing contact refusal, or is noticing their child is reacting to them in a negative way because of the separation through no fault of your own. So if you see that happening, the lawyer that you choose, you should make sure they have that book, quiz them, or make sure that they have a minimum proficiency in parental alienation theory.
We know that for many parents, it's cost prohibitive to have a lawyer. Let's talk about you and your resources, Larry, and what that looks like for parents that do decide to become self-represented.
So my entire professional life right now is based upon the fact that the entire legal system is broken for first of all, for everyone. Secondly, because it's an adversarial system where most families do not have adverse interests, where there's not severe abuse or substantial abuse going on. So to suggest that families are in a conflict where they need two lawyers presenting contradictory positions, where a judge chooses one and not the other, to me is faulty beyond repair. You should not have the same civil adversarial system that comes from British common law in family court. I hope that's clear. I know that's a little bit of scholarly, but the point is that you shouldn't have lawyers. You should more have social workers, in my opinion, or counselors working out custody arrangements. So that's the first issue. The second issue is it's unaffordable for anyone making under $200,000 or $250,000. I believe that high conflict litigation is you can't possibly have a traditional billing arrangement with an attorney and not lose more than is reasonable, or almost everything that you own in a high conflict situations. You can't. So traditional legal representation is unaffordable, and that's what I base my entire profession upon. My work is creating free or low-cost resources for self-represented litigants and training them on how to be a paralegal client or the best client, most self-sufficient client you can be, so that you can do 85% or 90% of the work that yourself, and then use the lawyer for that 10 to 15% that you can't do.
And you're finding success. And I'm finding that a lot of parents are starting to go this path because, like we discussed earlier, finding a lawyer that is versed in parental alienation or is even comfortable presenting it, whether it's saying the word parental alienation, resist, refuse, coercive control, they're still challenged with that position. I like to always say to my clients, focus on the alienating behaviors of that parent and focus on the impact of the child, how the child presents. And even just getting a lawyer, and oftentimes to just discuss that can be incredibly challenging for them. What are your thoughts on that?
That the amount of time, the problem, I never saw that problem myself. What I see is the amount of time that all the interview process and everything that needs to be done legally in a high conflict situation, the time that lawyer has to spend and the cost at which 90% of lawyers bill is so cost prohibitive. You're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in costs is what it would add up to be, or at least, $100,000 for the whole thing, for something that really shouldn't even be there. A cost, we have health expenses, we have educational expenses, we have food, we have heat, we have transportation. There's so many other things that you have to spend your money on. Who has that type of money other than the ultra rich? So the difficulty communicating, I guess that's always a challenge, but just the fact that you have to have someone do all this other stuff for you that you can do yourself is where the difficulty comes, where most people end up going broke before the case is anywhere near done, and therefore you're stuck as a self-represented litigant, even if you had some type of resource before you started.
Let's talk about the courtroom in the family law environment, in the family law space. Let's talk about the continuous need for judicial education, legal education. How are you seeing, or are you seeing any impact or change in that area? And what are your thoughts about that?
So from what I know from my judge friends in the system, I do not have an active litigation practice. However, as a practicing attorney, what I do know is that judges who get elected to the bench, the first thing that they do is usually they sit in family court with something probably maybe a weekend or a week of training without any type of deep dive into parental alienation theory. So as a general matter, family court is deprioritized in most jurisdictions across the country, where it should be the most niche, the most specialized, with the most intense, in-depth education, so that judges are not using their instinct, because parental alienation is counterintuitive. So when you use your quote unquote best judgment in family court and in parental alienation theory, the results are, in the immortal words of Dr. Stephen Miller, the late Dr. Stephen Miller, the results are catastrophic. So that the domestic violence lobby, who thinks, how awful judges are, it's really not that they're being malicious or that they're corrupt or anything like that. The problem is they're not educated, so that when they're using their best judgment, they're actually doing the opposite of what they should do. And not only not helping, they're making things far worse without the proper education. So I don't blame the judges. I blame the system. I blame the administrators, and I blame a societal lack of awareness of how important psychologists, social workers are and should be running that the family courtroom, whereas now untrained lawyers are doing it, which is why you have so many of the problems that we see.
Let's talk about the guardian ad litem and the role they play in the family court outcomes in the case and the impact that role has on families. I have a lot of clients in my coaching business where they say they want to assign a gal to my case. And 80% of people say it's not a good idea. They work against you. Ultimately, they turn on you and they're one-sided. And then you have the 20% that it's favorable. What are your thoughts on gals?
Same problems or worse problems with guardian ad litems than you have with judges. Guardian ad litems training. I took a conflict moderator, a custody moderator training course, or what do they call a parent coordinator of some sort?
Yeah.
Which I imagine is similar to the guardian ad litem training. But in Pennsylvania, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where I practice law, there is guardian ad litems must be lawyers. So what you have is someone who's gone to law school and passed the bar exam and knows nothing about the best interest of children, making decisions for these poor children rather than trained psychologists who have, specialized training in child psychology or parental rearing. If you want to absolutely destroy a system or destroy families, do what Pennsylvania does. Put people in charge of making the decisions on the best interest of children who absolutely know nothing about best interest of children other than legal theory. Now, does that mean, as you stated, maybe the effect is that, gee, if you know nothing other than your instinct or legal training and you're making decisions about, good parenting, bad parenting, or child abuse, chances are there's a 1 in 5 chance you'll get it right and a 4 in 5 chance you'll get it wrong. Does that mean they're bad people? Does that mean that they're, out to do ill or malintended? No. It means that you have a system that's putting people in charge who know nothing. That's just like saying, okay, we are going to put lawyers in charge of doing spinal surgery. Good luck, guys. Go ahead, go at it. Figure out the tools on your own. So, to use an absurd example, to make a very strong point, that's what we do here in Pennsylvania. So what should be done, in my opinion, is have counselors be the only ones who could be guardians and maybe give them a crash course in legal theory. But it's backwards there. So that's my short take.
And I think you're right. I think 4 to 5 times they get it wrong. And the consequence is the most negative impact on the child. But of course, the targeted parent and family members suffer immensely from that. Let's talk a little bit about the law center. How do you see your law center helping parents, family members who are self-represented? How does that work? How do they find you? How do they get to you?
So how does it work? Let's how they find me, how they get to me is different than how I would answer that first part of the question. So let me answer is that what I produce, what the law center is two things. It's actually, in a way, it's a fiction. It kind of doesn't exist. It's me. And what I have done is I've created 2 things to help people. Number 1, free online resources for self-represented litigants, which is the YouTube channel, and video instruction and tutorials on what to do. The second thing I've done is I have spent 9 months full-time or near full-time, maybe 35 hours a week, plus an additional 3 years of maybe 10 hours a week of resource gathering and indexing. And then I put an educational program, a paralegal training, a course curriculum teaching everything I learned in law school related to family court. Because parents, I interviewed maybe 20 to 40 parents and asked them what they wanted, what they needed to be able to be more self-sufficient in family court. And most of them has said that when they represent themselves and they walk into the courtroom, they're tongue-tied, intimidated, and the attorney dances around them. So what I wanted to do is take away that fear and that intimidation factor so that if someone had to go into court, they would know how little it is that they didn't know, how actually they could go toe to toe with a seasoned lawyer with maybe 12 hours of training. So that's what the Law Center is. It's called the Family Court Custody Boot Camp, which is a more in-depth, detailed organization of the videos that I put up for free. And the core concept behind it is this. What people do now in traditional legal representation to say, here, Mr. Attorney, here's the 5,000 retainer, here's the 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand, 100 grand, $500,000, because you're telling me you're going to do everything for me. And I'm going to lobotomize myself and wait for you to guide me. And that's expensive, because a lawyer to do your thinking for you and charge you anywhere from $250 to $800 an hour will cost millions in a 18-year high conflict litigation. So what I'm saying is, here's what your lawyer knows in a crash course. Now you can do what that lawyer does. The only thing you don't have is 50, 100, or 500 files of experience, and you're not your own lobbyist because you don't know the things, but the lawyer does. And you can buy that cheaper than what you're giving that lawyer to give full time to your high conflict case. So that's the nutshell.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to ask a follow-up question about this. As I work with clients that are both represented and self-represented, there's some uncertainty about being self-represented. The position is, for many people, is that there will be bias from the judge because you're self-represented. What are your thoughts on that?
Very, very true. And there's a study on that. And unfortunately, I don't have the exact title memorized, but I haven't given that lecture or I haven't given that tutorial in a while, but it's true. It's documented that you're about 20% at a disadvantage. A law school professor in Indiana actually did a study on that. And it showed that, through grading numbers in a control system, someone with a lawyer and someone without a lawyer present the exact same facts. Equally capably, you have a 20 to 25% or so less favorable outcome. And there's all details about that. So it's real. And for that reason, I recommend that people pay for that suit, that body, to go in with the legal degree. And I teach people how to prepare the memo, how to do the documents, or do everything you possibly can yourself, and then give that lawyer reports. Just to let you know, as a trial lawyer, there's lawyers in law firms, huge law firms, that are your trial dog. And all the other lawyers just prepare a trial package. And that lawyer goes to court, different case every week. So I want you to be that lawyer prep team, your own lawyer prep team, where, and that's what a paralegal is, by the way. A lawyer means you pass the bar. You can go into court and present evidence for a third party. You can still do that for yourself with that disadvantage that you and I just discussed. But to present that trial memo, you can do that. You can completely do that 99.9% just as well as a law firm or another paralegal with the proper training. That's my focus for training families. Is very doable. It's not rocket science. There's not a huge vocabulary that you have to learn. It's common sense. And with the tools that are available today with generative AI, I believe that's where we'll be. Everyone will be doing this 10 to 20 years from now, and lawyers will be making 10 to 20% of what they're making now, 80 to 90% less.
Yeah. And I think, although those statistics, 20% is really staggering, and I think that can be disheartening, I also think that there are many parents who do have representation and the outcomes are still not in the best interest of the child, and they're not favorable for that parent. So if I can emphasize how important it is, to Larry's point, be knowledgeable, be versed, be educated, be comfortable, know your case, know the law, be positioned to defend your right to be a parent. And because of the cost of being represented, many parents or family members cannot afford that. And in those cases, consider the law center. Consider taking the outcomes, even if they're not as favorable in some cases, into your own hands. It's really important that you take the ability, if there's free resources, or if you sign up for the boot camp, to know your rights. I just cannot emphasize the importance of that enough.
Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about the best interest of the child. And a lot of people say the courts 9 out of 10 times don't have the best interest of the child. if you're going to be self-represented, what would you say is the best and most effective way to find every city and state's best interest of the child? You may not know that, but how would you recommend parents look for that? Because every state and city is different. Isn't that correct?
There's a lot of different ways to get that information. The first one is go to lawhelp.org. Y should be HI, the two-letter abbreviation for your state. Pennsylvania is palawhelp.org. New Jersey is njlawhelp.org. California is calawhelp.org. Go there. And then there's a search bar and you type that in, or you type in the law for custody cases, and you will get that. And you type in, do a search bar, best interests of the child, and you're looking for your state statute that sets forth what the best interest standard is. The other way is a custom chat that's legal : or law and contracts, not an attorney. It's an online custom chat where you can just ask that, because it says it's indexed to the entire globe of summaries of law, and you can get the actual statute in your jurisdiction. It probably give you a link because it's trained to index that information. So look at the code and then you focus on that. What the best interest standard is really what whatever the judge says it is, but they do have to quote guidelines in issuing their decision, which often they don't. But it's still how you want to design your argument for your case, and really what is kind of focusing on child safety, nurturing the child, and basically a safe environment. What parent presents a safer environment and takes care of both the physical and emotional needs of the child.
So we know that in parental alienation and even non-parental alienation cases, just high conflict divorce and custody cases, it is not a short process. It is a lengthy, drawn out, frustrating, heartbreaking journey. I often tell people on my social media platform that how you present yourself in court compared to the alienating or high conflict other parent really has an impact on the judge's perspective. We are very comfortable with the 4 A's of parental alienation, the 4 C's of the parents, whereas the alienating parent tends to present as calm, cool, and collective, and the alienated parent, because of all the trauma that they're going through, tends to be angry and agitated and annoyed. What, as a past litigant, what are your thoughts on how you present in court, and some tips for parents who are self-represented or not even who are represented, how they present in court during the custody hearings?
As a general matter, if you're a self-represented litigant, you don't have an attorney to go through those. First of all, I have a video on the Law Center. If anyone puts in a little search bar and puts appearance in court, the video where I'm coaching you in detail on how to appear in court will appear, and I give basic tips such as the following: dress conservatively, neatly, appropriately, as if you're going to church or a business or business casual dinner. Wear your best good clothes, not necessarily formal, but dress respectfully. Stand tall appropriately, don't slouch. Make sure you're neat. Make sure you're bathed and shaved. Court is a conservative place, so you're not going to be dressing in tank tops or belly shirts or muscle shirts like you're a weightlifter or something. If you're coming from work and you cannot change and you cannot bathe and you have to show up in work clothes because otherwise you're going to get fired and you can't take off from work, you just give a polite explanation to the judge. Your Honor, I would have dressed much more respectfully and formally, but gosh, I know I'm in my nurse scrubs or, my work hat or work clothes, but I could not get up. My boss wouldn't let me, but this is all I could do to get here, and the judge will appreciate it. You always speak respectfully. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. You always give the judge a title, Judge so-and-so, or Your Honor. Don't use slang. Gosh forbid, don't curse. Be prepared as a self-represented litigant. Know the issues. Know everything that you need to know about your child, and things like the school records or medical records or what the child's health is. So as a general matter, you're show the judge respect and that you appreciate the seriousness of and the authority that the judge has, the seriousness of the event. And those are some general to-dos in the short time that we have.
Okay, lastly, I want you to just talk to us a little bit about your mission. What could you share with our listeners that would help them better understand parental alienation, help them understand the gender differences? I know you have a mission for boys and men. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are you seeing? And of course, I will put in the show notes how to contact you, the Law Center, any other ideas, any other missions that you're a part of. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So as an so when I address men in family court, the idea is usually they're out of custody. And to spend money to get 50-50 of your child is an incredible burden, especially if you're paying support. So my mission is to make sure people don't give up. And the biggest cause of giving up is running out of money and not financially being able to cut it. So I want to make sure you can get into court confidently, well prepared, irrespective of your financial circumstances, irrespective of the lawyer that you can afford, so that you are empowered to handle as much as your case as humanly possible. That's my mission, because I was able to do that because I was able to do as much of the work that I could myself. So my mission has been to duplicate my brain and to put it online. So if I pass away, people have all my knowledge that they can get through the Family Court Custody Bootcamp or my Law Center YouTube channel. Because from being an advocate, working in, a legal aid or a help desk at family court, or being an advocate for the father's rights movement, where we were giving advice online, or not advice, but trying to give as much information as we can. I learned that the only way to do that is an online program where you can put everything you want to say in one spot, index it by category, so people can use that for reference efficiently, effectively, in as little amount of time, as much information as possible. So, and if you can do 90% of your case yourself and only pay 10% of what that really greedy legal system wants, then you're there longer. You will be able to fight longer. And with that information, you will be more empowered, you will be more confident, and have the best chance to give your family a fair chance to have as much time with you as possible.
I love that. So one last question. I spend a lot of time interacting with people in this space, and maybe because my feed on all my social media channels is about parental alienation, high conflict divorce and custody and father's rights and mother's rights and domestic violence, I feel like there's more awareness than ever. What are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing that there's more recognition, or is it just my feed?
No, I think there is. And that's why that people who don't see it the way we do, they see everything related to physical abuse and they don't recognize psychological abuse, because abusers will argue that the evidence about their own personal abuse is actually coming from a false allegation. So they think of parental alienation. They try to argue against parental alienation being junk science, when really it's, I guess, just fooling the court with great expensive attorneys or lying under oath, because it's hard to, the argument, every case, parental alienation versus abuse, comes for he said, she said. You have someone lying because they're both saying you're the abuser, which is possible. Maybe they are both abusing the child, one mentally, one physically. Every case is different. There are some hybrid situations where both parents are behaving badly. But, addressing parental alienation, I think the judges are aware of it, which is why you have this movement to discredit parental alienation because you're representing a group of people who are usually losing based upon parental alienation theory, whether they're alienators or whether it's abusers who are have better lawyers. So there is awareness, but there's also disinformation, which is deliberate untruths to discredit parental alienation that muddies things. And that's a fight that you as an advocate and I as an advocate are fighting, when really what we need to do is tighten the courts and, to me, have a less adversarial system so that couples can spend, the parents can spend more time with what's called a longitudinal evaluation. Give it to the counselors longer so they can spot what really is going on, which is the abuser, which is the alienator, or if you have both.
Larry, thank you so much for your insight, for your legal input. Any final thoughts?
Charity, I want to thank you for having me and also as a final thought, generative AI and technology is forever going to reduce the extra expense that a parent faces from the legal system. This tool is going to revolutionize the world. It's going to put a substantial number, due to lack of business, of doctors, lawyers, teachers, and so many other professions out of business, because there's going to be less work to go around because computers are going to be able to do it for us. It's happening today. It's happening now, but this system has so much money. Artificial intelligence is going to have such a huge part of the market, it doesn't even need to advertise. But what I'm telling you is, what you're paying lawyers, you actually have a free lawyer on a chat GBT or any other subscription by saying to a generative AI system, I want you to put a legal hat on your head and be lawyer for me in family court in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I want you to advise me and start a conversation. And again, there's more you can get from that. But my final thought is, rely on that and become a student of it, and you'll cut down your legal expenses.
Thank you so much for being a guest. And for our listeners, I will certainly put all the information in our show notes. And you can definitely reach out to the Law Center. You reach out to Larry, and we together are supporting you as alienated parents and family members to fight for your rights to be part of your child's life. Larry, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charity.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fractured Families podcast. I hope our conversation has provided you with support, understanding, and actionable insights to help you navigate your own family challenges. Remember, healing is a journey, and reaching out for help is a sign of strength. You're not alone. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more families in need. You can contact me on social media at Parental Alienation is Real, and visit our website for additional resources and ways to get involved. Stay strong, stay connected, and keep fighting for the family bonds that matter most. Until next time, take care and stay resilient.